He punches a black waitress in front of everyone, unaware she's the Korean mafia boss's wife. The crystals shattered before I even felt the fist. I was mid-turn, balancing a tray of Shadao Diaquam, $317 a glass, when his knuckles connected with my cheekbone. The sound was wet and dull, like a stake hitting marble. Someone's wife gasped. The pianist in the corner kept playing Debussy, his fingers stumbling only once before muscle memory carried him through. It was 7:43 on a Friday evening in Pacific Heights, San Francisco. November 19th, 2023. The restaurant was called Le Bijou, tucked into a renovated Victorian that overlooked the bay, where old money came to pretend new money didn't exist. I'd been working there for 6 weeks. What hurt more than the punch was the laughter. Not from everyone, but enough. A nervous titter from table 9. A full-throated bark from the man's associate, already drunk on bourbon. The kind of laughter that confirmed what they'd always suspected about people like me, that we were breakable, forgettable, meant to serve and absorb and disappear. I didn't fall. That part I'm proud of. My grandmother taught me how to take a blow, not physically, but spiritually. You feel it, she'd say, but you don't fold. So I stood there, wine soaking through my vest, tray clattering on the herringbone floor, tasting copper in my mouth. The room crystallized into hyperclarity, the amber sconces casting shadows across cream-colored walls, the scent of truffle and butter and expensive cologne, the faces turning toward me like sunflowers toward carnage. He was still yelling, something about the wine being warm, something about incompetence, something about people like me not belonging in establishments like this. His face was flushed, his brioni suit perfectly tailored over a body that had never known real hunger. Later, I'd learn his name was Marcus Feldman, venture capitalist, Stanford legacy, the kind of man who collected contemporary art and mistresses with equal detachment. But in that moment, standing there with my cheek already swelling, I didn't know his name. I only knew the feeling of being reduced, of being seen as less than, of watching phones rise like periscopes, recording, broadcasting my humiliation to audiences I'd never meet. The maitre d' rushed over, his apologies aimed at the man, not at me. "Sir, please, I'm so terribly sorry." I watched him choose, watched him calculate, watched him decide that Marcus Feldman's $80,000 annual spending was worth more than my dignity. I touched my face. My fingers came away bloody. Here's what no one knew. 3 hours earlier, I'd been standing in a different room, wearing a different life. In that room, I was someone's wife, someone's equal, someone who'd chosen this, the anonymity, the service, the invisibility, as a kind of meditation. A temporary escape from a world where power was currency and violence was language. But Marcus Feldman didn't know that. He saw a black waitress in Pacific Heights and assumed he could do whatever he wanted. He saw someone he could break without consequence. He was wrong. I straightened my vest, picked up the tray, and met his eyes. His expression shifted, just for a second, as if some primal part of his brain recognized that he'd miscalculated, that the silence following his violence wasn't submission. It was something else entirely. "I'm sorry for the inconvenience," I said, my voice steady despite the blood pooling in my mouth. Not to him, to the room, to the witnesses, to the phones still recording. Then I turned and walked toward the kitchen, each step measured, each breath intentional. Behind me, I heard conversation resume, nervous and quick, everyone pretending they hadn't just watched someone be brutalized over a glass of wine. What Marcus Feldman didn't know, what none of them knew, was that in approximately 4 hours and 19 minutes, my husband would receive a phone call. And when Choi Jin-seok received that call, the entire architecture of Marcus Feldman's life would begin to collapse. But first I had tables to clear, because that's what invisible people do. We endure, we serve, We remember. And we wait. Before we continue, if you want to hear how this story unfolds, if you believe that dignity matters and underestimating someone can be the biggest mistake of your life, subscribe now. Hit that like button. Share this story, because what happens next will change everything. The kitchen was a wall of heat and Spanish cursing when I pushed through the double doors. Carlos saw my face first. The sauté pan in his hand clattered against the range. Dios mío, Kadisha, what? He reached for me, but I waved him off, heading straight for the prep sink. My reflection in the stainless steel backsplash was worse than I'd imagined. A split lip, my right eye already purpling, blood trailing down my jaw and staining my collar. I ran cold water, cupped my hands, let it wash away what it could. The sting brought clarity. Who did this? Maria, one of the line cooks, appeared beside me with a clean towel and fury in her eyes. She'd worked at Le Bijou for 11 years, seen everything, forgotten nothing. Table 12, the tall one in the gray suit. Feldman, her eyes went wide. Marcus Feldman hit you. I nodded, pressing the towel to my mouth. That hijo de puta. She was already moving toward the door, but I caught her arm. Don't. Kadisha, you can't just. I can, I will. I looked at her, really looked at her, until she saw what I needed her to see, that I wasn't asking for permission. Please, let me handle this my way. She studied my face, and I watched the calculation happen. Maria had raised 3 sons in the Mission District. She understood strategy, understood timing, understood that some battles aren't won in the moment they're fought. Okay, she said finally, but you need ice, and you need to file a report. I will. I wouldn't, not with the police, not yet. When I emerged from the kitchen 17 minutes later, the dining room had rearranged itself around the violence. Table 12 was louder now, emboldened by champagne and impunity. Marcus Feldman was telling a story, gesturing wildly, performing for his audience. His 3 companions, 2 men in finance fleece vests, 1 woman in Alexander McQueen, laughed at the appropriate moments. They'd ordered dessert. The audacity of it lodged in my throat like a stone. I picked up my section, 3 tables in the corner where the light was softer. An older couple from Nob Hill who came every Friday for the duck confit. 2 tech executives discussing a Series B fundraise. A young family celebrating their daughter's acceptance to Berkeley. Normal people. Good people. People who'd watched me get punched and done nothing. But what could they have done? This was Pacific Heights. This was how power worked, swift, brutal, and always protected. At 8:37, my shift manager, Trevor, cornered me near the wine cellar. Kadisha, you should go home. I'm fine. You're bleeding. I've stopped bleeding. Marcus Feldman is a major client. He's upset. He's threatening to. To what? I turned to face him fully. Trevor was 26, fresh from some hospitality management program, desperately trying to climb a ladder that only existed in his imagination. To hurt me, he already did that. Trevor's face colored. He says you spilled wine on his $7,000 suit. He wants you fired. Did he mention the part where he punched me? He says you were aggressive. That you. Trevor, my voice dropped low, intimate, dangerous in a way I rarely allowed myself. Do you believe that? He couldn't hold my gaze. It doesn't matter what I believe. It matters what the owners. The owners aren't here. You are, I am, and everyone in that dining room with a phone is. I stepped closer. So let me make this simple. I'm finishing my shift. I'm serving my tables. And if Marcus Feldman has a problem with that, he can say it to my face. Again. Something in Trevor's expression shifted. Maybe it was shame. Maybe it was recognition. He's asking for his check. Then I'll bring it to him. Kadisha. I'm bringing him his check. I printed the bill at the server station, my hands steady despite everything. $473.62, plus suggested gratuity. I folded it into the leather portfolio, walked across that dining room with my spine straight and my face ruined, and placed it gently on the corner of table 12. Whenever you're ready, sir. Marcus Feldman looked up at me, and for the first time I saw something flicker behind his eyes. Not remorse, not even recognition of his own cruelty, but calculation. He was realizing that I wasn't crying, wasn't cowering, wasn't giving him the submission he'd purchased with his fist. "You're still here," he said, his voice carrying that particular tone wealthy men use when they're used to disappearing people who inconvenience them. "Yes, sir. I want to speak to the owner." "He's not available this evening, sir." Then the manager. "I'll see if he's available, sir." "Don't bother." Marcus Feldman pulled out a black American Express card, the Centurion, naturally, and tossed it onto the table. "Just process this and get out of my sight." I picked up the card. Our fingers didn't touch. "Right away, sir." At the server station, I ran his card through the system. $473.62. He'd left no tip, not even $1, not even the dignity of acknowledgement. I brought back the receipt, placed it in front of him, waited. He signed without looking at me, his signature an illegible slash of arrogance. Then he stood, buttoning his suit jacket, and his companions rose with him. The woman in Alexander McQueen wouldn't meet my eyes. The two men in finance fleece smirked. As they walked toward the door, Marcus Feldman paused, turned, looked directly at me with an expression I'd seen before on the faces of men who believed the world existed to serve them. "You know what your problem is," he said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "You don't know your place." I smiled then, couldn't help it because he was right. I didn't know my place. Not anymore. Not in the way he meant it. And in approximately 3 hours and 42 minutes, he was going to understand exactly what that meant. "Have a good evening, sir," I said. "Drive safe." He left, the door closed behind him, the restaurant exhaled. And I went back to work. If this moment made you feel something, if you're wondering how someone can stand that still while their world is burning, subscribe now. This story only gets deeper. Before I was Kadisha the waitress, I was Kadisha Grant from Oakland. Before I was Kadisha Grant from Oakland, I was Nyla, my grandmother's favorite, the girl who read books on the porch and dreamed of worlds beyond the Bay Area fog. Before I was any of those things, I was just a daughter, a sister, a person who believed that if you worked hard enough, if you were kind enough, if you smiled through the casual cruelties and microaggressions and daily erosions of dignity, you could make it. You could be safe. My grandmother, Loretta Me Grant, raised me after my mother died. Ovarian cancer, 3 months after diagnosis, gone before I turned 8. My father was already gone in the ways that mattered, present but absent, loving but broken, a man who worked 3 jobs and still couldn't keep the lights on consistently. Grandma Loretta worked as a housekeeper in Pacific Heights. Ironic, isn't it? She cleaned the homes of people who looked right through her, learning their secrets while scrubbing their toilets, folding their designer clothes, arranging their fresh flowers every Tuesday and Friday. She'd come home with stories, not gossip exactly, but observations, lessons. "Baby girl," she'd say, settling into her armchair with her swollen feet elevated. "Rich folks aren't better than us. They're just more insulated from consequences." I was 11 when she told me that. I didn't understand it then. I understood it now. She died when I was 19. Stroke, sudden and massive, while making breakfast. I found her on the kitchen floor with bacon still sizzling in the pan and the morning news talking about tech IPOs and the weather in Napa Valley. I held her hand while the paramedics worked, knowing already that she was gone, that the woman who'd taught me how to stand was leaving me to do it alone. After that, I drifted. Community college, then San Francisco State, studying literature because I loved stories and social work because I wanted to fix things. I worked retail, then restaurants, then catering, always moving, always trying to outrun the grief that followed me like a shadow. I was 23 when I met Jin Seok. It was at the San Francisco Opera, September 21st, 2018. Opening night of Carmen. I was working coat check for a catering company, and he was there with business associates, Korean men in impeccable suits who moved through the crowd like sharks through water. He was different from them, quieter, watchful. When he handed me his coat, our eyes met, and something passed between us that I still can't fully name. Recognition, maybe, or inevitability. "You study literature," he said, not a question. I blinked. "How did you?" He gestured to my bag, where the corner of my battered copy of Toni Morrison's Beloved was visible. "Song of Solomon is better." That's a controversial take. "I like controversy." He smiled then, and it transformed his face from severe to something almost boyish. "I'm Jin Seok." "Kadisha." "Kadisha." He pronounced it carefully, respectfully, like my name was something worth getting right. "Will you have coffee with me after your shift?" I should have said no. Should have recognized the danger in his intensity, the weight of whatever world he carried. But I was 23 and lonely and tired of being invisible. So I said yes. We had coffee at 2:17 in the morning at an all-night diner in North Beach. He told me about growing up in Seoul, about his family's business. He was vague about the details, and I didn't press. About moving to San Francisco when he was 16 and learning English by reading American novels. "Morrison, Baldwin, right?" he said. "They understood what it meant to be other, to be seen but not seen, to carry history in your bones." I told him about my grandmother, about Oakland, about the way Pacific Heights felt like a different planet, even though it was only miles from where I'd grown up. About studying literature because stories were the only place I'd ever felt truly safe. "Safety is an illusion," he said, and something in his voice made me shiver. "But dignity is real. Agency is real. The choice to stand or kneel, that's real." We talked until dawn broke over the Transamerica Pyramid, and when he walked me to my bus stop, he kissed my hand, old-fashioned, courtly, and asked if he could see me again. 3 months later, I knew what he was, who he was, what his family controlled in the shadows of San Francisco's underworld. The shipping routes, the protection rackets, the quiet empire built on intimidation and blood. I should have run, should have recognized that loving someone like Jin Seok meant entering a world I couldn't control, couldn't escape. But love isn't logical, and Jin Seok, for all his darkness, saw me, truly saw me. Not Kadisha the waitress or Nyla the girl from Oakland or the black woman who was supposed to know her place. He saw the person I was beneath all that, intelligent, stubborn, fierce in ways I'd learned to hide. "You make me want to be better," he told me once, lying in bed in his apartment overlooking the Golden Gate Bridge, the fog rolling in thick and gray. "You make me feel possible," I replied. We married 11 months after we met. Small ceremony, just his most trusted people and my 2 closest friends. No grandmother to hold my hand, no mother to adjust my dress. Just me and Jin Seok, promising to protect each other in a world that protected no one. For 3 years, I lived in his world, learned its rules, learned how to move through rooms where violence was currency and loyalty was survival. I wasn't naive about what he did. But I also saw his complexity. The way he protected the Korean community in the Tenderloin, the way he funded schools and clinics, the way he operated by a code that was brutal but consistent. Then I started feeling claustrophobic, started missing the anonymity of my old life, started wanting to remember who I'd been before I became Mrs. Choi. "I want to work," I told him 6 weeks ago, over breakfast in our Pacific Heights penthouse. Different neighborhood, different altitude, but still Pacific Heights. "You don't need to work." "I know, but I want to remember what it feels like to be just Kadisha, not your wife, not someone's target, just me." He understood. That's what I loved about Jinseok. He understood hunger in all its forms. So I became a waitress at Le Bijou, using my grandmother's maiden name on the application. Just for a few months, just to remember. Jinseok hated it, worried constantly, had people watching from a distance, making sure I was safe. "Nothing's going to happen," I'd assured him. "It's just a restaurant, just rich people and expensive wine." I was wrong. When Marcus Feldman's fist connected with my face, I wasn't just Kadisha the waitress. I was Kadisha who'd lost her grandmother to exhaustion. Kadisha who'd been invisible her whole life. Kadisha who'd married into power but chosen to step away from it. And in that moment, getting punched in a restaurant in Pacific Heights for the crime of being black and female, and in the wrong place at the wrong time, I remembered why power mattered. Not to abuse it, but to protect yourself from people who would. Marcus Feldman's evening didn't end at Le Bijou. From what I learned later, from sources I won't name but who see everything in the city, he went to his office in the financial district. 47th floor, corner suite, panoramic views of the bay. His firm, Feldman Ventures, specialized in disruptive technologies and emerging markets. Translation: they funded apps that made it easier for rich people to avoid interacting with poor people. He told the story to his partners, made it funny. "This waitress," he'd said, loosening his tie, pouring bourbon from a crystal decanter, "was giving me attitude. Incompetent, slow, probably high on something. I barely touched her and she acts like I committed assault." They laughed, of course they laughed. Because in Marcus Feldman's world, people like me weren't real. We were scenery, obstacles, things that existed to facilitate their comfort and then disappear. He didn't know my name, didn't care to know it. In his mental catalog of the evening, I was filed under minor inconvenience, successfully neutralized. What he knew about me: black woman, working class, disposable. What he assumed about me: no family with resources, no connections with power, no ability to fight back. He assumed I'd take my split lip and my poverty wages and my humiliation and I'd swallow it. Because that's what people in my position did. We swallowed. We endured. We disappeared. He assumed wrong. At 10:53 that evening, Marcus Feldman left his office and drove his Tesla Model S to his home in Presidio Heights. $4.2 million, purchased in 2021, renovated to include a home gym, a wine cellar, and a meditation room he'd never used. His wife, Stephanie, former Instagram influencer, current wellness consultant, was already asleep. He poured another bourbon, scrolled through his phone, checked his portfolio, up 2.7% for the day. Checked his email, 3 meetings tomorrow, lunch in Napa, drinks with a potential LP from Singapore. He did not check to see if I was okay, did not wonder if I'd filed a police report, did not consider, even for a moment, that his actions might have consequences. Because men like Marcus Feldman lived in a world without consequences. They'd been raised in that world, educated in that world, made wealthy in that world. Every institution, legal, financial, social, was designed to insulate them from the fallout of their cruelty. He'd been sued before, settled. Non-disclosure agreements and carefully worded press releases and lawyers who knew how to make problems disappear. A sexual harassment claim from an associate in 2019 disappeared. An assault charge from a parking attendant in 2021 disappeared. A pattern of behavior that anyone paying attention could see, but no one with power cared to investigate. I was just another line item in his ledger of impunity. What he didn't know, I wasn't in his ledger, I was in someone else's. And that someone else didn't settle, didn't negotiate, didn't believe in non-disclosure agreements or carefully worded press releases or lawyers who made problems disappear. That someone else believed in balance, in consequence, in the old rules that said, if you hurt what's mine, I hurt you worse. But I'm getting ahead of myself. At 11:41, Marcus Feldman's phone buzzed. A text from one of his partners. Bro, that Waitress thing is blowing up on Twitter. He frowned, opened the app, and there it was, shaky phone footage from Le Bijou, shot from table 9, showing him punching me, showing the wine spilling, showing me standing there bleeding while he shouted. The caption, venture capitalist Marcus Feldman assaults black waitress at Le Bijou for spilling wine. This is San Francisco's elite. 37,000 views. Comments pouring in. Quote tweets from activists, journalists, people who'd never heard of Marcus Feldman but recognized the shape of his violence. His first thought wasn't remorse, wasn't horror at seeing himself exposed. His first thought was damage control. He called his lawyer. Jerome, we have a situation. Jerome Chen, crisis management specialist, always available, always expensive. I saw, we need to get ahead of this. Can we take it down? The video, no, it's everywhere already, but we can craft a narrative. You were provoked. She was aggressive. The wine was expensive. You reacted instinctively to protect yourself. Will that work? It usually does. We'll need a statement. Something about taking anger management seriously, committing to being better, donating to a relevant charity. What charity? Doesn't matter. Something with women or minorities in the name. Marcus Feldman exhaled. This was familiar territory. Scandal, spin, survival. Do it. One more thing, Jerome said. Do we know who she is, the waitress? Why would that matter? Context matters. If she has a criminal record, if she's undocumented, if there's anything we can use to muddy the waters. Find out. I'll have my investigator look into it. They hung up. Marcus Feldman poured another bourbon, his third of the evening, and told himself the story he needed to hear. He was the victim. I was the aggressor. This would blow over. It always did. But somewhere in the primitive part of his brain, the part that still remembered when humans were prey, when threats were physical and immediate, something whispered a warning. He ignored it. Because Marcus Feldman didn't believe in warnings. He believed in power, in money, in the fortress of privilege that had protected him his entire life. He believed he was untouchable. At 12:19, he finally went to bed, setting his phone on the nightstand, the Twitter notifications still buzzing like angry wasps. He fell asleep easily, dreamlessly, a man with a clear conscience because he'd never developed the capacity for guilt. He didn't know that across the city, in a penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Golden Gate Bridge, my husband was receiving a very different kind of notification. Not from Twitter, not from the news. From me. Subscribe if you believe underestimating someone can be the biggest mistake a person can make. Because what Marcus Feldman didn't know was about to reshape his entire world. I finished my shift at 11:22. My face had stopped bleeding, but the swelling was worse. My right eye was nearly shut, the skin around it tight and hot. My lip had cracked open twice more, once when I smiled at the couple from Nob Hill, once when I answered a question about the dessert menu. Trevor had tried to send me home 3 more times. I'd refused 3 more times. Because here's what I'd learned growing up the way I did. You don't abandon your post. You don't let them see you broken. You finish what you started, even when finishing costs you everything. My grandmother taught me that. Dignity, she'd say, pressing a cool cloth to some injury or another, a playground scrape, a kitchen burn, the invisible wounds of racism that hurt worse than any physical pain, isn't about what they do to you. It's about what you do after. So I finished my shift, served my tables, smiled when appropriate, moved through that dining room like I owned it, like my face wasn't screaming, like my heart wasn't a fist of rage and grief. At closing, Maria cornered me by the lockers. "You're not okay." "I'm fine." "Kadisha," she put her hand on my arm, her grip firm and maternal. "I saw the video, everyone's seen it. This is bigger than Le Bijou now." I knew. I'd checked my phone on my break. The Twitter video had 200,000 views. Comments ranged from supportive to victim blaming to the casual racism of people who'd never been punched for the crime of existing in the wrong space. "What are you going to do?" Maria asked. "What I need to. If you need anything, a place to stay, someone to talk to, someone to testify." "I know, thank you." She hugged me then, careful of my injuries, and I let myself sink into it for just a moment. Let myself be held by someone who understood that survival sometimes looked like service, and service sometimes looked like strength. When I left Le Bijou at 11:47, the streets of Pacific Heights were quiet. The fog had rolled in thick and cold, softening the edges of the Victorian mansions, muting the city lights. I walked 6 blocks to where I'd parked my car, a 10-year-old Honda Civic that I'd kept despite Jinseok's protests, because it was mine in a way nothing else was. I sat in the driver's seat for a long time, engine off, just breathing. My phone buzzed, a text from Jinseok. "Where are you?" I called him instead. He answered on the first ring. "Kadisha." His voice was controlled, but I knew him well enough to hear the fury beneath it. "Tell me where you are." "I'm okay." "That's not what I asked." "I'm in my car, Pacific Heights, I'm coming home." Silence, then, "What happened to your face?" I'd sent him a photo on my break, just so he wouldn't hear it from someone else, wouldn't see the video before I could explain. "A customer got angry. It's handled." "Kadisha." My name in his mouth was a prayer and a warning. "Tell me who." "Jinseok." "Tell me who hurt you." I closed my eyes. This was why I'd hesitated to call. This was why I'd almost gone somewhere else, anywhere else, before coming home. Because I knew what would happen next. Knew that Jinseok's love was a weapon, and when that weapon was aimed at someone, they didn't just get hurt, they got erased. His name is Marcus Feldman, venture capitalist, lives in Presidio Heights. I gave him the rest, the firm, the address, everything I'd learned from the staff gossip and the quick Google search I'd done on my break. "Thank you." His voice was calm now, dangerously calm. "Come home, I want to see you." "Jinseok, please don't." "Come home, Kadisha." I drove. The streets were empty, the fog so thick I had to use my hazards. The city I'd grown up in felt foreign suddenly. All these neighborhoods I'd cleaned, served, moved through invisibly, now revealed as territories, battlegrounds, places where power was negotiated in violence and silence. Our building was in Pacific Heights proper. The irony wasn't lost on me. 27th floor, corner unit, bought under a shell corporation that couldn't be traced back to Jinseok's family. Secure, private, anonymous in the way only the very wealthy can achieve. He was waiting when I opened the door. Jin Seok was 31, lean and controlled, with the kind of face that cameras loved, sharp cheekbones, dark eyes that saw everything, a mouth that rarely smiled but transformed when it did. He was wearing black slacks and a white shirt, sleeves rolled up, the tattoos on his forearms visible, Korean script and geometric patterns that told the story of his family's history. When he saw my face, something in his expression went very still. "Kadisha," he closed the distance between us, his hands coming up to cradle my jaw, tilting my face toward the light. His touch was gentle, but his eyes were murder. "This is what he did." I nodded. "In front of everyone." "Yes." And the restaurant did nothing. They tried to placate him, to make him comfortable, to make it go away. Jin Seok's jaw clenched. "I'm going to kill him." "No. I'm going to kill him slowly." "Jin Seok," I put my hands over his, feeling the tension in his fingers. "That's not what I want." "What do you want?" I'd been thinking about this all evening. Between serving tables and smiling through the pain and watching Marcus Feldman's Twitter presence explode into a scandal. I'd been thinking about justice and revenge and the difference between the two. "I want him to understand," I said. "I want him to feel what I felt. I want him to know that his actions have consequences, but I don't want him dead." "Kadisha, I want him ruined. I want his life dismantled. I want everyone who watched him hit me to watch him fall, but I want him alive to experience it." I held his gaze. "Can you do that?" Something shifted in Jin Seok's expression. "You're asking for restraint." "I'm asking for precision." He studied me for a long moment, his hands still cradling my face, his thumbs gentle against my swollen skin. "You know what my father would say, what the old ways require." "I know, but I'm not asking for the old ways. I'm asking for something more surgical, more civilized, permanent." He smiled then, small and dark. "I married a woman more dangerous than me." "You married a woman who understands that death is mercy, and Marcus Feldman doesn't deserve mercy." Jin Seok kissed my forehead, careful of my injuries. "Tell me what you want, exactly." So I did. We sat on the couch, the city lights blurred by fog, and I laid out what justice would look like. Not violence, or not just violence, but exposure, consequences, the systematic dismantling of everything Marcus Feldman thought made him untouchable. "It will take time," Jin Seok said when I finished. "I have time. It will require resources, connections, people who owe me favors and people I'll need to convince." "I know. And when it's done, when Marcus Feldman is broken and exposed and destroyed, you understand he'll know it was me. He'll know what I am, what we are." I nodded. "I understand." "And you're okay with that?" I thought about my grandmother, cleaning toilets in Pacific Heights while dreaming of a world where her granddaughter wouldn't have to swallow rage and smile. I thought about all the other women, black, brown, poor, invisible, who'd been hit, diminished, erased by men like Marcus Feldman. I thought about the girl I'd been, reading Morrison and Baldwin and believing that dignity alone could protect you. "I'm okay with it," I said. Jin Seok pulled out his phone. "Then it's done." At 12:41 that night, while Marcus Feldman slept dreamlessly in his Presidio Heights mansion, my husband made a call. And the machinery of consequence began to turn. The first call went to a man named Park Min-jun. Min-jun was Jin Seok's uncle, not by blood, but by bond. He'd been with the family for 37 years, rising from street-level collections to managing the organization's financial infrastructure. He was 62, wore expensive but understated suits, and had the kind of mind that could see 3 moves ahead in any game. Jin Seok woke him at 12:43. We have a problem. Min Jun was alert immediately. Who? Not who, what? Someone hurt Kadisha. Silence, then. How badly? She'll heal, but that's not the point. No, Min Jun agreed. It's not. Who do we need to handle? Jin Seok told him. Gave him Marcus Feldman's name, firm, address, social security number. Because when you have the resources Jin Seok had, information was just another commodity. I know this name, Min Jun said. Feldman Ventures. He's been trying to break into South Korean tech markets. Aggressive, arrogant, made enemies. Can you use that? I can use everything. What's the directive? Complete ruination. Financial, social, professional. I want him to watch everything he's built collapse, but I don't want him dead. A pause. That's unusual. It's what Kadisha wants. Ah, Min Jun understood then. Because Jin Seok's love for me wasn't a secret among his inner circle. It was a known variable, a factor they planned around. How much latitude do I have? Whatever you need, call in every favor, leverage every connection. But Min Jun, Jin Seok's voice hardened. I want this done correctly, no shortcuts, no sloppiness. When Marcus Feldman falls, I want it to be obvious that he fell because of his own choices, his own cruelty. I want the world to watch and nod and say he deserved this. Understood. I'll start with his investments. He's overextended in 3 markets, cryptocurrency, biotech startups, and a commercial real estate project in Soma. I can apply pressure to all 3. Do it. The second call went to a woman named Sarah Chen. Sarah was a journalist, San Francisco Chronicle investigative reporter, 34 years old and already with 2 Pulitzer nominations. She was also one of Jin Seok's strategic assets, not on payroll, not compromised, but mutually beneficial. Jin Seok fed her stories about his competitors, and Sarah built her career exposing the corruption Jin Seok wanted exposed. She answered on the 3rd ring, voice heavy with sleep. This better be good. I have a story for you. It's 1 a.m. It's about a venture capitalist named Marcus Feldman, about a pattern of violence against service workers, about a system that protects wealthy men at the expense of everyone else. I could hear her waking up fully. I saw the video. Twitter's going crazy. That video is the tip. I can give you 3 other incidents. Names, dates, settlements, all documented, all covered up. Why are you giving me this? Because the woman he hit tonight matters to me. And because you're the only journalist in this city I trust to tell this story correctly. What's your angle? Justice. Try again. Revenge. Better. I heard the sound of a laptop opening. Send me what you have. I'll need to verify it independently. You'll be able to. Everything I give you is real. And what do you get out of this? I get to watch him fall. The 3rd call went to a lawyer named Daniel Wu. Daniel was corporate litigation, 39, brilliant and hungry and unscrupulous in the ways that made him valuable. He'd worked with Jin Seok before, technically on legitimate business, but everyone understood that legitimate was a spectrum, and Daniel operated at the gray end of it. I need you to file a lawsuit, Jin Seok said without preamble. Against Marcus Feldman, Feldman Ventures. On what grounds? Assault, intentional infliction of emotional distress, civil rights violations under the UNRWA Act. I want every legal avenue explored. Who's the plaintiff? Jin Seok gave him my name. My full name, Nyla Kadisha Grantchoy, because this wasn't about hiding anymore. Your wife. Daniel's voice was carefully neutral. Yes. This will be public, very public. That's the point. Marcus Feldman will fight. He has resources. So do I. Better resources. You understand that discovery goes both ways. If this goes to trial, your finances, your associations, everything. Daniel, Jin Seok's voice was steel. I'm not asking for your concerns. I'm asking for your expertise. Can you destroy Marcus Feldman in court? Yes. Then do it. The fourth call went to someone I didn't know about until much later. Someone in the San Francisco Police Department. Not a beat cop, not a detective, someone higher. Someone who understood that power in this city wasn't about badges, it was about leverage. Jin Seok told this person about Marcus Feldman's history, about the parking attendant assault that had been quietly dropped, about the sexual harassment claims that had been settled, about the pattern of behavior that any honest investigation would reveal. I want this reopened, Jin Seok said. All of it. I want him interviewed. I want him uncomfortable. I want him to understand that the protection he's relied on is gone. That's ambitious. That's what I'm paying for. By 2:17 in the morning, the machinery was in motion. Min Jun was already working the financial angles, calling contacts in Seoul, London, Singapore, explaining that Marcus Feldman was now a liability, a risk, someone whose proximity would damage their reputations. Sarah Chen was drafting her story, reaching out to sources, verifying information, building the narrative that would run in the Chronicle within 48 hours. Daniel Wu was preparing the lawsuit, pages and pages of legal language that would translate my humiliation into dollars and precedent. And somewhere in the SFPD, files were being pulled, cases were being reviewed, and the foundation of Marcus Feldman's protection was beginning to crack. Jin Seok came back to the couch, where I'd been waiting, watching him work. He sat beside me, exhausted but satisfied, and pulled me against his side. It started, he said. I know. Are you sure about this? Once it begins, we can't stop it. I thought about Marcus Feldman, sleeping dreamlessly, believing he was safe. I thought about the woman in Alexander McQueen who wouldn't meet my eyes. I thought about Trevor, choosing to protect the man who'd hurt me. I thought about all the systems, all the structures, all the careful architectures of power that had allowed this violence to be casual, expected, forgiven. I'm sure, I said. Jin Seok kissed the top of my head. Then sleep. Tomorrow everything changes. I wanted to believe him, but I'd lived in the city long enough to know that change was a slow, grinding process. That justice wasn't a switch you flipped. It was a war you fought, step by step, consequence by consequence. Still, that night, in Jin Seok's arms with my face aching, and my heart full of something that felt like hope and fury mixed together, I let myself imagine it. Marcus Feldman, waking up to a world that no longer protected him. Marcus Feldman, learning what it felt like to be powerless. Marcus Feldman understanding, finally, that underestimating someone can be the most expensive mistake a person can make. I fell asleep around 3, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't dream of serving tables. I dreamed of standing at the edge of something vast, the Pacific Ocean, maybe, or the future, and watching the tide change. Marcus Feldman woke at 6:43 to 72 missed calls. His phone had been buzzing all night, texts, emails, voicemails piling up like debris after a storm. He'd silenced it around 2, annoyed, assuming it was just more Twitter nonsense that Jerome would handle. But when he finally looked at the screen, the names that appeared made his stomach drop. Not random internet activists, not journalists he'd never heard of. His board members, his limited partners, his business partners, people whose calls you didn't ignore. He scrolled through the texts. Marcus, we need to talk, immediately. Call me, this is urgent. What the fuck did you do? I'm pulling out of the Soma deal. Don't contact me again. His hands were shaking. He called Jerome first. The crisis manager answered on the first ring, his voice tight and professional. Marcus, we have a situation. I know, the video. It's not just the video. The Chronicle is running a story, front page, about you. Marcus felt his chest constrict. What story? 3 other women, similar incidents, settlements, all documented. Sarah Chen's byline. It goes live in, Jerome paused, 2 hours and 13 minutes. How does she know about the settlements? Those were sealed. Someone leaked them. Who? I don't know, but Marcus, there's more. 2 of your South Korean investments collapsed overnight. Something about credit issues with local banks. Your cryptocurrency fund is being audited by the SEC. Someone filed an anonymous complaint. And a civil lawsuit was filed against you at 7 this morning. Assault and civil rights violations. Plaintiff is, another pause, Kadisha Grant Choi. Marcus blinked. Who? The waitress, except she's not just a waitress. She's married to Choi Jin-seok. The name meant nothing to Marcus. Should I know him? Jesus, Marcus? Jerome's professionalism cracked. Choi Jin-seok, Korean organized crime. His family controls half the import-export business in the Bay Area. Protection, enforcement, money laundering. He's not someone you want as an enemy. Marcus sat down on the edge of his bed, his expensive sheets suddenly feeling like sandpaper. You're telling me the woman I hit is married to? Yes. Why didn't she say anything? Why did she? Because she didn't need to. Jerome's voice was flat now. Marcus, everything is falling apart. Your investors are spooked. Your partnerships are dissolving. The SFPD wants to re-interview you about the parking attendant incident from 2021. And the Chronicle story, Marcus, it's bad. Really bad. 3 women on the record. Photos, medical reports. A pattern. We can fight this. Fight what? The video is real. The settlements are real. The new lawsuit is real. We can't spin our way out of facts. Marcus stood, packing, his mind racing. Then we settle with the waitress, whatever she wants. Just make it go away. I don't think money is what she wants. Everyone wants money. Not everyone is married to someone who has more money than you. That stopped him, because Marcus Feldman's entire life had been built on the assumption that his wealth made him untouchable, that he could buy his way out of any consequence, that people like waitresses and parking attendants and women who said no to him, they could all be handled with the right amount of money and the right lawyers. But if Kadisha Grant Choi didn't need his money, what do I do? He asked, and hated how small his voice sounded. Get dressed. Come to my office. We need to prepare for the Chronicle story and the lawsuit. And Marcus, Jerome's voice dropped lower, you need to understand that this isn't just going to blow over. This is different. You've made powerful enemies, and they're not going to stop until you're destroyed. How do you know that? Because I've seen this before. Not often. But I know what it looks like when someone decides to ruin you, and that's what's happening. Marcus hung up. His hands were still shaking. He looked at his reflection in the floor-length mirror, 46 years old, successful, powerful, a man who'd never really faced consequences for anything. For the first time in his life, Marcus Feldman was afraid. He wasn't wrong to be. At 8:37, the Chronicle story went live. Sarah Chen's byline, 5,000 words meticulously sourced. The headline, Pattern of Violence, How Silicon Valley Venture Capitalist Marcus Feldman Used Wealth to Silence Accusers. It included the video from Le Bijou, embedded at the top. Interviews with 3 other women, an assistant, a parking attendant, a rideshare driver, all of whom described similar incidents. Sealed settlement documents that had mysteriously been leaked. Financial records showing how Feldman Ventures had paid for silence. Statements from hospitality workers across San Francisco about Feldman's reputation for aggression and entitlement. Within 2 hours, it had been picked up by the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, TechCrunch, and every major media outlet that covered Silicon Valley. Within 4 hours, 2 of Marcus Feldman's board members had resigned. Within 6 hours, 3 of his limited partners announced they were withdrawing their funds from Feldman Ventures. By noon, the firm had lost $47 million in committed capital. Marcus spent the morning in Jerome's office, watching his life dismantle in real time. His phone wouldn't stop buzzing. His email was flooded. The company's website had crashed from traffic. "We need to issue a statement," Jerome said, typing frantically. "Something apologetic, something about seeking help, something." "I'm not apologizing." Jerome looked up. "Marcus, this isn't negotiable. If you don't apologize, this gets worse." "How can it get worse?" As if in answer, his phone rang. His wife. He let it go to voicemail. She called again, and again, and again. Finally, he answered. "Steph." "Who are these women?" Stephanie's voice was ice and fury. "Who are these people saying you hit them?" "It's not what it looks like." "It's exactly what it looks like, Marcus. There's a video, multiple videos, medical reports. You punched a waitress in the face." "She spilled wine on my—" "I don't care what she spilled." Stephanie was screaming now, her influencer composure completely shattered. "My phone is exploding. My friends won't answer my calls. My mother is asking if I'm safe. Am I safe, Marcus?" "Of course you're." "Have you ever hit me?" The question hung in the air. "No," Marcus said, but they both heard the lie. "I'm leaving," Stephanie said. "I'm taking Olivia and going to my sister's in Los Angeles. Don't contact me. My lawyer will be in touch." She hung up. Marcus stared at his phone, his wife, his 7-year-old daughter, leaving. At 1:57, the SFPD called. They wanted to interview him about the Le Bijou incident. And while they had him, they had a few questions about the parking attendant incident from 2021. And maybe some other incidents. Could he come down to the station? Jerome advised against it, without a criminal lawyer present. At 3:12, Marcus's lead investor, a man named Patterson who'd been with the firm since its founding, called personally. "I'm out, Marcus. The fund is out. We're liquidating our position." "Donald, please. This is all being blown out of proportion." "You punched a woman in the face over wine. That's not proportion. That's just facts. I've made you millions. And you're about to lose me more. Sorry, Marcus, it's business." It wasn't business. It was justice. But Marcus Feldman didn't understand the difference yet. By 6:38 that evening, Marcus Feldman had lost. His wife. $63 million in investment capital. 4 board members. 7 business partnerships. His reputation. His sleep. His sense of safety. He sat in his empty house in Presidio Heights. Stephanie and Olivia were already on a plane to LA, surrounded by expensive furniture and expensive art, and the expensive silence of a life falling apart. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Now you know what she felt like, but this is just the beginning." A friend. Marcus Feldman finally understood. He hadn't just punched a waitress. He'd punched someone's wife, someone's person, someone who mattered to someone with real power. And now, That power was being systematically applied to dismantle everything he'd spent his life building. He should have been smart enough to be afraid at Le Bijou, should have recognized the danger in my stillness, in my refusal to break. But men like Marcus Feldman never learned until it was too late. And by then, fear wasn't just on his side. It was his only companion. If you're still watching, if you believe that consequences matter and that power has to answer for cruelty, subscribe now. You'll want stories that end like this. 3 weeks passed. Marcus Feldman's destruction wasn't sudden. It was methodical, architectural, like watching a building collapse floor by floor until nothing remained but rubble and the memory of what used to stand there. Week 1 was financial. His cryptocurrency fund, already under SEC investigation, revealed accounting irregularities that triggered a full audit. Investors fled. The fund collapsed, wiping out $237 million in value. Marcus's personal net worth, heavily tied to the fund, evaporated overnight. His biotech investments, pressured by Korean partners pulling support, failed to secure their next funding round. 3 companies folded. 2 more announced layoffs. Marcus's reputation as a tech visionary became a liability. Investors associated his name with failure. The Soma Real Estate project, his biggest bet, lost its primary tenant when a Korean import-export firm, one of Jin Seok's legitimate fronts, canceled their lease agreement. Without that anchor tenant, the project collapsed. Marcus's personal guarantee on the construction loan left him exposed to $17 million in debt. By day 8, Feldman Ventures announced it was suspending operations. By day 10, the firm was officially dissolved. Week 2 was social. The Chronicle story spawned a dozen follow-ups. Sarah Chen won awards. Other journalists dug deeper. More women came forward, not with assault allegations, but with stories of entitlement, aggression, the casual cruelties of a man who believed his wealth insulated him from basic decency. His name became a hashtag. Feldman fallout, venture capitalist violence, accountability matters. The San Francisco social scene, the opera openings, the Napa weekend gatherings, the charity galas in Pacific Heights closed ranks against him. Invitations were quietly rescinded. His name was removed from donor walls. The meditation room in his $4.2 million home remained unused, but now for different reasons. He had nowhere to go. His friends and Marcus discovered he had fewer real friends than he'd believed, stopped returning calls. The men who'd laughed when he told the story at his office never contacted him again. They understood the calculus. Association with Marcus Feldman was now career suicide. Stephanie filed for divorce on day 12. Full custody of Olivia. Division of assets heavily in her favor. Marcus's lawyers advised him to accept whatever she wanted, because fighting would only generate more negative publicity. Week 3 was legal. My lawsuit, filed by Daniel Wu, moved through the system with unusual speed. Marcus's lawyers tried to delay, to negotiate, to find leverage, but every avenue was blocked. Discovery revealed more than Marcus wanted exposed: emails, texts, patterns of behavior that painted a damning portrait. Daniel was methodical, surgical, building a case that couldn't be dismissed or settled quietly. The SFPD investigation, meanwhile, had expanded. The parking attendant from 2021 agreed to testify. So did the assistant who'd filed the sexual harassment claim. Pattern evidence, the prosecutor said, admissible and damaging. Marcus was formally charged with misdemeanor assault on day 19. His lawyers negotiated a plea deal. guilty plea, anger management classes, community service, 5 years probation, $50,000 fine. No jail time, but a permanent criminal record. Marcus took the deal. What choice did he have? The civil lawsuit went to trial on day 23. It lasted 6 hours. The jury deliberated for 47 minutes. They awarded me $1.8 million in damages. Not because I needed the money, but because the jury wanted to send a message. Wealth doesn't grant permission to hurt people. Marcus Feldman, who'd started November with a net worth of $47 million, ended December owing more than he owned. He had to sell the Presidio Heights house, sell his Tesla, sell his art collection, his wine collection, everything that had defined his identity as a successful man. He moved into a 1-bedroom apartment in Dali City, took a job doing financial consulting for small businesses. His Stanford degree and his industry connections meant nothing now. His name was poison. On December 23rd, he sent me a letter, handwritten, 5 pages. It started, "Dear Mrs. Choi, I don't expect your forgiveness." It went on to detail his remorse, his shame, his understanding of what he'd done. It read like a confession, like therapy homework, like a man desperately trying to reconstruct meaning from rubble. It ended, "I will spend the rest of my life trying to be better. I hope that counts for something." I never responded. Not because I was cruel, but because Marcus Feldman's redemption wasn't my responsibility. His growth, his healing, his transformation, those were his to figure out. I'd gotten what I needed, acknowledgement that his actions had consequences. That power without accountability was just violence with better branding. And I'd gotten something else, too, proof that systems could work if you knew how to work them. That justice wasn't just what the powerful allowed, it was what the determined could force into existence. Jin Seok never apologized for the role he'd played. Neither did I ask him to. We'd operated in gray areas, leveraged connections that existed outside traditional power structures. But the consequences Marcus faced were his own making. We just refused to let him avoid them. "Do you feel better?" Jin Seok asked me on Christmas Eve, as we sat in our penthouse watching fog roll over the Golden Gate Bridge. "I feel resolved," I said, "like I finished something that needed finishing." "And the job at Le Bijou?" "I quit." I'd handed in my notice 3 days after the assault. Trevor had tried to convince me to stay, offered me a promotion, but I was done performing invisibility. "I'm going back to school, social work degree. I want to help people navigate systems that are designed to break them." Jin Seok smiled. "You're going to be terrifying." I learned from the best. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights blur through fog. Somewhere out there, Marcus Feldman was learning how to live with consequences. Somewhere else, other women were still being dismissed, diminished, hurt by people who believed power granted immunity. But tonight, in this moment, I'd done what I could. I'd stood. I'd demanded accountability. I'd refused to disappear. My grandmother would have been proud. January brought quiet. The media moved on to new scandals, new villains, new stories of powerful people behaving badly. Marcus Feldman became a cautionary tale, a reference point, a name that appeared in think pieces about accountability and consequences. But for me, January was about healing. Physical healing came first. My face recovered, the swelling faded, the bruises yellowed and disappeared, the split lip became a barely visible scar. I looked in the mirror and saw myself again, not the ghost of violence. Emotional healing took longer. I'd underestimated the toll that choosing invisibility had taken. Working at Le Bijou, performing servitude, watching wealthy people treat service workers as furniture. It had eroded something in me that I hadn't noticed until it was almost gone. Jin Seok suggested therapy. I resisted at first. Grant women handled their own problems, but eventually agreed. Dr. Patricia Williams was a Black woman in her 50s, with an office in the Fillmore and a reputation for working with people who'd experienced trauma. She didn't flinch when I told her about the assault, about my husband's world, about the calculated revenge we'd enacted. "How do you feel about what happened to Marcus Feldman?" she asked during our third session. "Satisfied," I said honestly, but also aware that it didn't change the fundamental problem. Men like him still exist. Systems that protect them still exist. But one less man is protected now. One less. How many thousands more? Dr. Williams leaned back in her chair. "You can't save everyone, Kadisha. You can't dismantle every system. But you can refuse to accept your own victimhood. You did that. That matters." I thought about my grandmother, scrubbing floors in Pacific Heights while teaching me about dignity. I thought about all the women who'd come before me, who'd endured worse with less recourse, less power, less ability to fight back. "It feels incomplete," I admitted. "Like we won this battle, but the war is still." "The war is always still," Dr. Williams interrupted gently. "That's the nature of systemic change. It's not one dramatic victory. It's 1,000 small refusals to accept injustice. You made one refusal. Others will make theirs. Eventually, the system shifts. And in the meantime, you heal, you grow, you use what you learn to help others." I enrolled at San Francisco State in February. Master's program in social work, focus on advocacy and systemic change. My classmates were mostly younger, mostly idealistic, mostly exhausted by the gap between the world they wanted and the world that existed. I fit right in. Jin Seok adjusted. He'd always been protective, but after the assault, his vigilance had intensified. It took time for him to trust that I could move through the world without constant supervision, that I was strong enough to handle whatever came next. "I knew you were strong when I married you," he said one night in March, after I'd come home late from a study group. "But I didn't understand how strong until I watched you stand in that restaurant with blood on your face and refuse to break." I learned from my grandmother. "Your grandmother must have been remarkable." "She was. She would have liked you." "Because I'm violent and dangerous." "Because you're loyal. And because you understand that power is meaningless if you don't use it to protect the people you love." We were learning how to be us again, not just husband and wife, but partners who'd chosen to live in multiple worlds. His world of calculated violence and mine of systemic change weren't as separate as they seemed. Both required understanding power. Both required strategy. Both required the willingness to make people uncomfortable in service of larger truths. In April, Sarah Chen published a follow-up story. Not about Marcus Feldman, he was old news, but about the broader pattern of violence against service workers in San Francisco. She interviewed dozens of people, waitresses, drivers, cleaners, delivery workers. All of them had stories. All of them had been told to accept it, to move on, to not make trouble. She quoted me anonymously. "For a long time, I believed that invisibility was survival, that making myself small would keep me safe. I was wrong. Safety isn't about disappearing. It's about making sure the people who hurt you can't hide either." The article sparked conversations, city council hearings, proposed legislation to protect service workers. Change was slow, incremental, frustrating, but it was happening. Le Bijou closed in May, not because of the assault, officially, but because enough people had decided they didn't want to eat at a restaurant that had prioritized a wealthy man's comfort over a worker's safety. Business dropped. Investors pulled out. The owners sold the space to a Korean barbecue restaurant that paid living wages and treated staff with respect. Poetic justice, Jin Seok called it. Maria texted me when she got the closure notice. That place was dying anyway, but I like to think we killed it. We did, I replied. We absolutely did. I visited my grandmother's grave in June. Cypress Lawn Memorial Park in Kalma, overlooking the bay. I brought flowers, her favorite yellow roses, and sat on the grass beside her headstone. I stood, Grandma, I told her. Like you taught me, and it cost me, but it also gave me something back. Agency, power, the knowledge that I don't have to accept cruelty just because it's convenient for someone else. The wind carried my words away, but I like to think she heard them anyway. In July, I ran into someone from Lebiju. Not Marcus. He'd moved out of the city entirely, last I heard. But the young family who'd been celebrating their daughter's Berkeley acceptance. They recognized me at a coffee shop in the Mission. You probably don't remember us, the father said, approaching carefully. But we were there that night, when you... I remember. We didn't help you. We should have helped you, and we didn't. I've thought about that every day since. I studied his face. Genuine remorse, genuine shame. You're helping now, I said. By remembering, by thinking about what you'll do differently next time. Will there be a next time? There's always a next time. The question is whether you'll be ready. They thanked me, apologized again, offered to buy my coffee. I declined, didn't need their guilt, but appreciated the gesture. Because that's what accountability looked like sometimes. Not grand legal victories or financial ruin. Just people choosing to do better, to be more aware, to recognize their complicity in systems that hurt others. Small changes, incremental shifts. But enough small changes, enough incremental shifts, and eventually the whole structure transforms. It's December again. 13 months since Marcus Feldman's fist connected with my face. 13 months since I learned that invisibility isn't protection and silence isn't safety. I'm sitting in my apartment now, not the penthouse anymore. Jin Seok and I moved to the Sunset District in September, wanted something quieter, more grounded. We have a view of the ocean instead of the bay, fog instead of city lights, room to breathe. My social work degree is almost complete. I'll graduate in May, already have a job lined up at a nonprofit that works with immigrant communities, helping people navigate legal systems designed to confuse and exclude them. Jin Seok is teaching me Korean. I'm teaching him about Morrison and Baldwin, about the Black literary tradition that shaped how I understand resilience and resistance. We're learning how to be partners without losing ourselves in the process. Marcus Feldman still exists somewhere. Not in San Francisco, he left, couldn't handle the weight of his reputation. Last I heard, he was in Phoenix, working in insurance, living a smaller life. Whether he's genuinely changed or just learned to hide his cruelty better, I don't know. I hope he's changed, genuinely hope it, because the point was never just punishment, it was education. Teaching him, teaching everyone who watched, that actions have consequences. That power without accountability is just violence waiting to happen. But his redemption isn't my story anymore. My story is this. I survived something designed to break me, and I used that survival to build something stronger. I learned that dignity isn't about how others treat you. It's about how you respond when they treat you badly. I learned that power comes in many forms. The power to stand. The power to demand accountability. The power to refuse invisibility even when invisibility feels safer. I learned that healing isn't linear. Some days I'm fine. Some days I see a man in a gray suit and my chest tightens. Some days I have to remind myself that I'm safe, that I'm strong, that I survived and I'm still surviving. I learned that justice isn't always what we think it should be. It's not always dramatic courtroom victories or perfect endings. Sometimes it's just making sure that the person who hurt you doesn't get to hurt anyone else quite so easily. And I learned that love, real love, complicated love, love that exists in gray areas and difficult choices, means giving someone the space to be both strong and vulnerable. Jin Seok gave me that space, gave me the resources to fight without fighting for me. Let me choose my own justice. That's rare, that's valuable, that's worth protecting. Last week, I went back to Le Bijou's old location. The Korean barbecue restaurant, called Harmony, is thriving. I sat at the bar, ordered bulgogi and soju, and watched the staff move through the space with confidence and respect. The owner, a woman named Kim Sun-hai, recognized me. Jin Seok had introduced us months ago. "How's the food?" she asked. "Perfect." "And the atmosphere?" I looked around. The space was warm, welcoming, alive in ways Le Bijou never was. Staff laughed with customers. Tipping was discouraged, everyone made living wages. The hierarchy that had defined the old restaurant was gone, replaced with something more collaborative, more human. "It feels right," I said. "It feels like what this space should have been all along." Sun-hai smiled. Sometimes places need to be torn down before they can be rebuilt correctly. True for places, true for people, true for systems. Tonight, I'm making dinner for Jin Seok and Min Jun, galbi and kimchi, and all the dishes Jin Seok's mother used to make. Min Jun is bringing wine, something expensive from Napa that he'll pretend isn't a peace offering for the violence he helped orchestrate on my behalf. I'll accept it gracefully, because I'm not naive about what happened, about the gray areas we operated in. But I'm also not ashamed. We used the tools we had to create the outcome we needed. Imperfect justice is still justice. Tomorrow I have an interview for my thesis. A woman who was assaulted by her employer and fought back through the legal system. She won. Barely, but she won. I'm going to tell her story, and stories like hers, because documentation matters. Witness matters. The refusal to let violence be forgotten matters. This is my life now, not invisible, not silent, not safe in the ways I used to think safety looked. But real, and mine, and powerful in ways that have nothing to do with who I married or how much money I have access to. Powerful because I choose, every day, to stand, to speak, to refuse the invisibility that people like Marcus Feldman depend on. My grandmother used to say, "Baby girl, the world will try to make you small. Don't let it." I didn't let it. I stood in a restaurant with blood on my face and refused to break. I walked through a system designed to protect my abuser and demanded it work for me instead. I loved a dangerous man and taught him that protection means giving someone the tools to protect themselves. And when it was over, when Marcus Feldman was ruined and I was healing and the world kept spinning, I walked away with something more valuable than revenge. I walked away with proof that I mattered, that my dignity wasn't negotiable, that underestimating someone because of their race, their gender, their job, their visibility, that's not just rude, it's dangerous. Because you never know who someone really is. You never know what they're capable of. You never know who loves them enough to move heaven and earth on their behalf. Marcus Feldman learned that lesson the expensive way. I hope others learn it more cheaply. But either way, the lesson gets learned. And that's what I walked away with, the knowledge that this wasn't about revenge. It was never about revenge. It was about worth, my worth, every invisible person's worth, the worth that exists whether anyone acknowledges it or not. I know my worth now, completely, unshakably. And no one, no matter how wealthy, how powerful, how protected, can ever take that from me again. Subscribe for stories about dignity, justice, and quiet power. Because these stories matter. Because you matter. Because we all deserve to know our worth and to demand the world recognize it too.